Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McGellis, and we have returning guest, Maureen St Germain. Well, we're going to get into a lot of things, but first, please hit that like, subscribe, and share button. We appreciate your support. All right. CMEs, solar mass injection, solar flares, geomagnetic storms, three-eyed atlas. Oh my goodness. So, with all that being said, it is vibing people up. Are they noticing things that are unexplained?
Yes. Well, first of all, I did want to talk a little bit about the meditation that I wrote called um, Supernova Meditation. And
Okay.
I wrote it 6 months ago, not knowing that we would have these events coming at us at this time. But then when these events started happening, my guide said, that's it, use that. And so it's not available on our app because they're so new. So we're going to do a little special. We're going to offer Connect with Your Galactic Family, um, the Supernova meditation, and one more that I don't remember right now. And we're going to bundle it and make it easy for people to buy these as a download and put them to work for themselves. So that's a nice piece that you can use as a opportunity to work with the CMEs and still benefit, because we're going to be benefiting from that for a long time. And on the last time I was on, you made a comment that I just loved, and that had to do with spiritual crop dusting. And I
Yes.
thought galactic crop dusting, and I think that's so perfect. But one of the things that happens to people is the black helicopters. They start to vibe up, and the black helicopters show up. And it's very interesting. Doesn't happen to everybody. And please don't think that it's a status, because it's not. Um, what happens is there is a group of officials, I'll call them, people in the government who are charged with the responsibility of um, tracking ETs, just like in Men in Black. And when you pop up and you've turned on your macabre, or maybe you've just vibed up in another way, what happens is you show up on their screens. It's not radar, but it would be like radar. They need to check you out. And so I was with a friend recently, and she said, "Do you remember what happened to me?" And she described that she was driving her car on the Long Island freeway, and a black helicopter came down and got in front of her, just like in the movies. And then two more black helicopters came on either side of her. She wasn't breaking the law. She wasn't driving too fast or anything. And she said it really freaked her out. But because she knew ahead of time that this could happen, and she had recently turned on her Merkaba, and she's a very powerful being in the first place, so her energy was already really high. That was the visitation. Now, why are they doing it? They just want to make sure you're not an ET, because if you're an ET, you're only allowed in certain cities. And what's interesting is um, I've had a lot of black helicopter stories in New York City, but I've also heard black helicopter stories in other cities, like in Nebraska. Then I can't remember the name of Portland, I think. Portland, Oregon, excuse me, not Nebraska. Portland, Oregon. This woman was a piano teacher. And it's kind of funny because, piano teachers know when you haven't practiced. And she had asked me to come back another time. I'd already taught one class at her house, and now she wanted to host another class in her house because she enjoyed my company. She wanted me to visit. But she was going to go on vacation. And then when she came back, that's when our class would be. So she realizes that she hasn't been doing the Merkaba like she's supposed to, or like she thought she's supposed to. And so she decided to turn it on. And all of a sudden, her husband has already gone to bed. All of a sudden, her mountain home is shaking. And she's in a subdivision, but their properties are built each person has their own kind of house. And she had a log cabin, and the whole log cabin is shaking from this helicopter that's practically landing on the top of her roof. And she sticks her head out. She can verify that she saw the black helicopter. Okay. Then she goes on vacation. And why was she doing the Merkaba at that point and she hadn't done it in a long while? Because Maureen's coming and she's going to know I haven't been practicing, which is a piano teacher's mindset, right? But then when she got back from vacation and her grandson lives across the street, he came over and he said, Grammy, did you see that black helicopter that practically landed on your house before you left? Oh no, honey, what did you see?
Oh my goodness.
And one of my students said to me one time, Maureen, why don't they just take your schedule, which is readily available on the web, and use that? And I said, what makes you think they haven't done that? If they know I'm going to be in a city and I'm helping people activate their Merkaba, they're not going to bother us. But if somebody, has gone a while without doing that, and then they turn it on and they're random, and guess where this lady lived? In Portland, they're maybe 10 miles, air miles from Mountain Home Air Force Base.
Mm.
So, she attracted attention. So what happens is they're all they're doing is tracking you and discovering if you're an elevated human or if you're an ET. And they can't do it remotely. They need to observe you for some reason. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I live in Washington, D.C., so I'll have to fill you in if I start seeing black helicopters getting close
Yeah.
to my person for sure. So here's another
Yeah.
question. Here's another question. What does fear point to? We got a lot of fear going on because of all these energies, because of all these unknowns, because of just the uncertainty in the world. But what does fear point to?
It points to the edge of transformation. It points us to the place where we need to make a change. And there are times that you are being asked to do something or to move in a new direction or to physically pick up and move, and you're getting clear that that's what's needed. Or maybe your spouse is getting a job in a new city and you're already comfortable in the house you're in and you don't want to move. That's when the fear will come up. And rather than seeing it as a block, it's a pointer. It shows us which way to go. Here's where the old ego structure meets possibility of 5D expansion, because 5D expansion is multi-directional. A lot of people don't realize that the dimensions are nested, and that in 3D we're operating 3D, 2D, and 1D. People don't realize that. So 1D is this point of awareness. 2D is the point of movement. So if you see a circle with a bullseye, just one center point, that's who we are. We're becoming self-aware. We're becoming more aware what we're capable of and all of that. That's 1D. Then 2D is movement. So we move from the place of recognizing that we're different from source, and at the same time, we're able to move. But we're basically only able to replicate what we know, which is us. So we replicate ourselves over here, and we replicate ourselves over there. And that's 2D. 2D is also very linear. So it's cause and effect. And a lot of people think cause and effect is a 3D, but it's not. It's 2D because you're moving from your center point to the edge of that sphere or that circle. And then 3D is where we engage with mathematics. And the mathematics we engage with are the phi ratio. And the phi ratio is very close to the Fibonacci sequence. They are very intertwined in the fact that you can produce phi with the Fibonacci sequence. And The Fibonacci sequence, fairly well known to people, but just to give you a refresher, it is the sequence that begins with 0 and 1, and then 1 and 1 is 2. Then the next number is 3. The next number is 5. Now, how do we get to 5? 2 and 3 are 5. And then 5 and 3 are 8. And 8 and 5 are 13, and so on. So the whole sequence builds on the answer that you get and the previous answer. Those two together produce the third thing. And what's interesting is that's how we manifest. So when we manifest, we're taking where we're at, and that can be anything because we're co-creators, and where we've been, and we merge them. And that produces that next thing, that next big thing. That's why manifestation in the present now is so powerful, because when we stay in the present, then the past, we're coexisting. Now, what's interesting is people don't realize that we're actually blending those two together. But when we give ourselves permission to be aware of two versions of the reality at the same time, and to not fight with it, not go into dichotomy. This isn't a match. This isn't working. This is not the same as. And instead just go, well, that's that, and this is this. And I'll give you an example. When we go to the movie theater, we suspend disbelief. We suspend disbelief that we're sitting in a chair, and instead we become the protagonist. We jump when something happens to him or her. We laugh when there's a joke. We cry when it gets poignant. And we participate with the activity in the film, but at the same time, we know we're in our seat. So we're holding two realities. Now, when we get really deep into a movie and it really engages us, that's where we're living. And that's no different than manifestation. Because when we go live in the version of the reality of what we really want, we're not in a wanting state anymore because we already have it. And so that becomes so powerful that it overrides this other piece. It's still in there because the math says the next thing is over here. So now think about this. The Fibonacci sequence, when you keep going higher and higher, any two numbers that are adjacent, so adjacent pairs, so 89, 55 produces, when you divide those two numbers together, it's 1.618, the value of phi. If you divide 34 by 21, you get 1.619. And so every sequence is a little closer and closer to the magic number. And what is the thing that all of this means is that it's in 3D, it's what we're made of. And so I have this little toy, it's called calipers. And I like to show people that our bodies are made of the phi sequence. So the phi ratio rather. So the little finger to that knuckle is 1, and then this points to the wrist bone. And then if you expand it and you go to the elbow, if I can do this, it sometimes moves on me. It still points to the wrist bone. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
See that? Yeah. Isn't that cool? So it's made, the phi ratio is found in the flowers and the plants. It's found in the relationship between Venus and I think it's Mars and the sun. And I could go on and on. We find phi everywhere in 3D. That's how we co-create in 3D. In fourth dimension, it's moving through a portal. And we're learning how to do this. People are touching portals all the time without realizing it. Every time you go to a place that maybe has an energetic match, maybe in a past life. So you walk the Veil of Tears, let's say, in the Southwest, and that's the march of the Native Americans to their reservation. And many people died. It was a very difficult, sad thing. If you were one of those people in that time period and you visit that site, you'll suddenly have that memory come up. And that memory allows you to tunnel into it. And it's like a portal. So there's a whole nother magic around portals. But when we're dealing with fear, it's telling us to take a hard look at what we have resisted and what we are afraid of in other terms. Now, one time when in the very early years when I was doing this work, I was struggling money-wise, and I had just I had all this fear about paying the electric bill, and maybe it was only $50, but I was terrified, and I could feel the fear running through me. And I asked the fear to talk to me. And that's when I that's when I saw these little monsters. And they weren't scary, but they were, like, what do we call it? A pig pen in the
Mm-hmm.
Peanuts
Yeah.
cartoon. And all these little monsters were trying to look fierce, but I could see past it. And I started telling these little fear mongers that I love you. I love you. And what could you tell me? And they showed me side by side in my mind's eye a jacket that I had bought that was on sale, right size, right color, big discount, and the electric bill, both same money. And I had recently separated from my husband and I didn't have a lot of money. And I realized that that purchase prevented me from paying the bill. And that's when I put myself on a budget. So fear is always pointing to something that we need to change. And the interesting thing is we either change our belief or we change our behavior. It's very simple. What do we need to change? Change my belief or change my behavior. If I believe that, I don't know, something, like a certain food I eat is going to cause a certain effect, and I've got a lot of fear around it, just change my belief.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know that if I do X, that Y will happen, and I have a lot of fear around that, then I just change my behavior. For example, on that one, I grew up Catholic, and we were supposed to go to Mass every Sunday. So when I started doing a different church and a different organization, I had fear about missing Mass. So I changed my belief and changed my behavior and chose proactively to do that instead of going to Mass. So, what am I afraid of? Which allows us to have more freedom. And that's curious because the thing that we most want is something familiar. So, fear is the equivalent of please keep it familiar. And that's why the answer is always change. And when we're afraid of change, all we need to do is show me the benefit. Show me how I can change. Help me let go. And then the miracles happen right and left. So fear is a doorway. And this part's funny. This is all in this cute book called Be a Genie that I wrote years ago. Um, Fear is a messenger. Remember, we've said that before. But what if fear is the FedEx guy and he's got a package? He's going to keep coming back if he needs your signature. And each time the message gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So when we ignore it, it grows. When we ignore it, it grows. So the thing about fear is we want to ask, what is the fear trying to tell us? And let that take any kind of form you want.
Well, I really like that because I look at fears like beer. It's energy beer. It's brewing like brewer's yeast, right? And it's just
Yeah.
this energy that flows through you. And, unless you reflect upon it and understand it and meet it where it is, you'll flee. You'll want to run. You'll deflect. You'll resist, instead of or you'll get propelled somewhere you didn't really want to be because you didn't stop, drop, sit and connect with the fear. So I love what you're talking about. This is really important that people, and then fear can become familiar so you recognize it when it comes up. So I like what you said there about that too. But fear likes company. It likes to go back to old patterns.
Uh-huh. That's right. That's right. And that's a cute statement. The fear likes company. Um, and that's another temptation to look at, are we letting fear be the imposter to try and resist because we think that it's going to take us to some kind of spiritual evolution if we ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is a gift if we will just recognize it and allow it to move through us.
Yes.
And as you said earlier in another show with us, um, breathe. Just breathe through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Reset that nervous system. So another question for you would be, what is the matrix composed of? Because we're getting rid of old programs. A lot of fear is bubbling up in front of everyone. They're not looking at it from, programming screen after a screen. I don't even know how to describe what I'm seeing right now, but so what would the matrix be composed of?
The matrix consists of programming, like computer programming, that is being broadcast onto humanity. It's being broadcast in various ways through the airwaves of, internet, phone, Wi-Fi, and so on. And it is also um, a programming. It goes back to what I was talking about with the spheres of influence.
Mm-hmm.
So the matrix is made up of mass consciousness and the belief systems that have been seeded in the matrix. The culture, again, culture puts pressure on people to behave a certain way, and that's also part of the matrix. And that's a very interesting concept because that's where humans have collectively chosen to program the matrix themselves. You know, we don't have to we don't have to, what's the word? We don't have to have somebody else doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. You know, the whole culture thing is very, very interesting. And one of the funny things that I saw that really drove home the point was I watched an Indian woman comic who was brilliant because she was commenting on being Indian, but being in America. And she was saying that her son said, I got good grades. Aren't you proud of me? And she said, why would I be proud of you? We paid for the tutor. We paid for you to go to private schools. You should be getting good grades. Okay? So again, that's a culture shock because in America, it would always be a big deal, right? And then she made again a slur against women, but she's a woman, she can get away with it. She's Indian, she can get away with it. So she said that she told her mother-in-law, that her granddaughter had gotten into Stanford. And the mother-in-law said, why is it such a good school if it accepts women? Again, this is cultural stuff, but you can imagine those kids that are growing up from an Indian family. And what I discovered, because I'm married to a man who's Sri Lankan, and their culture is very similar. I have observed this, and the culture in Australia where he grew up. So it's like a Western culture, like America, but at the same time, it's they have their subculture of the Sri Lankan community. So we were there for a wedding, and it was a wedding of a friend of the family. It was a beautiful wedding in a huge facility. There were 500 guests and three white people. I was blown away. It wasn't that they were prejudiced, they were maintaining their culture.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is I discovered from another source that immigrants who cluster um, are more rigid about their cultural rules and cultural way of life than the people in the old country. Why? Because they want to maintain their identity. They want to maintain
Mhm.
who they are. And so they tend to stick to the rules even in a more strict way. And I found this to be true in another person that I knew was from Lithuania. Same deal. His family expected him to marry a nice Lithuanian woman. Um, and to maintain the purity of their culture, even though they've moved to the melting pot, you know? So culture's big. And then friends, coworkers, and neighbors and associates. That's another layer, another sphere of influence that is also contributing to the matrix by what's happening in the social scene. And you alluded to that in the very beginning of our conversation, where you talked about all this craziness about the CMEs and the Three Eye Atlas and all of the, people feeling a little nutso about this. That's the culture. Or I'm trying to think, oh, here's a cultural phenomenon that I was caught by surprise a couple of years ago. People would say, instead of saying yes, or I agree, or that's true, they would say 100%. Okay, I'm sure you've heard it. It used to be, I agree with that 100%, but now they just say 100%. That's agreement. Again, it's just jargon, but that's part of the sphere of influence. And that jargon can get programmed. So part of the problem with jargon is that it can be used to lead people, and it can be used to carry other messages that are hidden that we don't realize. So I wonder if 100% says I'm in alignment with what's going on around here, 100%. And I most certainly am not. I'm sure you're not either. And then there's the family. That's the last sphere of influence. And the family can be, I'm going to say traditional Catholic, like my family was, or they could be a broken family and they still have their influence, whether the mother moved out or the father moved out. So it's all these layers make up the matrix.
Okay, then. So, would you say that a lot of this is dissolving now because we're bringing it to our attention, even though it looks like in many different corners that it's here, it's locked down, it's growing, it's staying? I foresee things being disintegrated. I see old programs coming up to the surface to be looked at and to be accountable individually of how you want to follow through with that program anymore, or you want to step out of it and analyze it and observe it, or give it an aerial view from another angle before you decide I'm going to hang on to that. So I think we're going through a lot of that as well, would you not?
Yes. And what's lovely about what you just said is that when we encounter these things and we are feeling the resistance, to look at it and to say to yourself, okay, I don't like this. I'm not doing it. But let me think about it and then sleep on it. And it is amazing how many people get the solutions or they get peace in the dream time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not above asking for a miracle. And I've had things happen in my life where I've asked for a miracle. And, I have a swimming pool here and I swim in the pool. It's cold now, so I actually wear a wetsuit when I'm swimming, which is hilarious because it's an extra 10 minutes just getting that wetsuit on. Anyway, I'd asked for a miracle and I'd been asking for a miracle. And while I'm swimming, a little white feather falls on the water next to me.
Mm.
And I knew the angels were on it. And that's one of the things that people try to understand the difference between the angels and the ascended masters and the ETs of the light and so on. And what I can say about all of that is the angelic realm is all about miracles. So when you announce, I need a miracle, you know, that produces a result. And the result is the angelic energy is intervening on your behalf. And of course, once I got the feather, then I quit asking because I knew they were on it.
That is so powerful. So while we're in this time right now where we're feeling chaotic and we've got this automatic taser going on from the inside out and the outside in. We're getting hit with CMEs and solar flares and geomagnetic this and three eye atlas that and black helicopters and all kinds of other insanity. We've got the holidays among us. And you were just saying like people start to follow something and then they say, hey, let me step back and think, let me sleep on that. And that's really where we need to be at this moment in time with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, at least here in the States. We're about to fall into the old program, the old rituals, the old, well, I got to go to mom's house and then I have to go to dad's house, or well, I got to do this. Now I got to go buy this for the kids. And now so and so needs this. And then I got to go stock up at the grocery store. And it becomes such an overwhelming chore and a financial burden among emotional things. Would you suggest that people step out of that crazy matrix and say, hey, I'm just going to step away and I'm going to see what intentions I want to set up for the upcoming weeks and I'm going to sleep on it?
Mm-hmm. And not be afraid to be different. For example, I have one sister-in-law who announced to me a couple of years ago, I am only cooking turkey. She knows I'm a vegetarian, well, pescatarian. I eat fish. I'm only cooking turkey. I want you to come, but I'm only going to cook a turkey, which is kind of like, really? It's not that hard. So I said, okay, no problem. And I showed up with a piece of salmon that went on the grill, and my brother grilled it for us, and everybody had some. It was lovely. It's
Mhm.
Thanksgiving. There's supposed to be lots of food anyway, right? That's stepping into your power. Because in another environment, you might say to yourself, I really need to go. My brother misses me. My sister-in-law's okay, but I'll just chill, or I'll have a little piece of turkey and make nice. Not anymore. Not anymore. And to be okay with yourself in such a powerful way that you're not afraid to say, this is what I need. This is what I want. And I don't mean harm to you. I'm just going to stand for what I want.
I love it. And I think we're in that energy right now where we need to step up and, you know, can join the heart, the throat chakra, and the mind all together and put our boundaries down as kindly as we can. Because if we're, being so coherent with everybody else and everyone else's agenda, we're bypassing and harming ourselves because it does hit in the emotional house, it does hit in the mental house, it hits physically. Like, for example, when you just said that about the turkey, I'm having Thanksgiving, we're just having turkey. She knows you're vegetarian, pescatarian, right? Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to do turkey, but I've got you a piece of salmon. I hope that that's okay. Or could you maybe bring the fish of your choice, right? I don't want to bypass what it is that you like. So it sounds to me like she was being, this is what I'm doing and that's what I'm getting. And I'm not thinking about you. It's on my agenda. So you could have been resentful. You could have got your feelings hurt. But instead, you saw the bigger picture from a different aerial view and you thought, Perfect. You go ahead and do yours. Allow me to bring this, and I will bring enough to share. So you change the whole energy element of it.
Yeah, and I didn't even tell her. And that's something else. Remember, I told you when we were talking earlier that I just completed a 5-day fast.
Yes.
Well, I had planned this fast a couple of weeks out because I knew when I would come back from this big trip that I wouldn't have been eating that much and it would be a good setup to get into a food fast. And this was I'll call it an assisted fast because they gave the program I was in, they gave you a little bit of food and lots of coaching. Okay. So all of a sudden I remembered we were having brunch guests on Sunday, and my fast didn't end until Tuesday morning. And I thought about it. These are lovely human beings. So we made this beautiful brunch, laid everything out. I put a cup of tea in front of me and we blessed the food. And then I said, I forgot I started a fast and I'm not going to be over till Tuesday. So I'm just having tea. And my charming guest looked at me and says, I'm not afraid to eat in front of anybody.
Oh,
Isn't that cool?
yes. Yes,
So
that's awesome.
I kept thinking, what am I going to do? Because I remember when someone wanted to meet me for dinner, we met at this nice restaurant, and then he said he was fasting. And I was shocked and embarrassed the first time. I wasn't mad, but I felt self-conscious.
Sure.
But that was several years ago. How much we've changed, right?
Right. Well, then so many people would have said, okay, you know what? I'll eat a little bit, then I'll fast until Wednesday. Right. But you stuck to it because you made a commitment. And then you had to prepare all that food for someone else, but yet you got to sit and really enjoy and talk because you weren't fork to mouth the whole time. You were
Right.
sipping tea, you were watching them really enjoy your food and having wonderful conversation. And what beautiful nourishment to the heart and the friendship building that created.
It's true. And what was interesting is this particular program I was on is wonderful. And I did not feel hungry. I looked at the food. I saw how, we had fresh fruit, we had waffles, we had chilaquiles, we had
Mm-hmm.
everything. And I could look at the food and say, wow, that looks great. I'm not having any. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
You got more willpower than I do. All right. Well, girly, we got to end. But you have anything else that you would like to share with our guests? I think you had some products you wanted to mention, didn't you?
Yes, I have some new tools on my website, and we are creating a 6-month way of the Akasha Guide. And it is a very thorough training, very high level training, including very high training in the Akashic Records, as well as business training, promotions, and a whole lot more in certification. And it gives people a lot of coaching, and it's a wonderful program. And that's going to be available in the new year. We are running these programs like every 3 months. And then I also have a program called Solar Fire Activation. And this is very powerful because it shifts people's energies in an instant. And this is me channeling energy for the client, and they get the upgrade. This includes 2 sessions, so they can either have 2 solar fire sessions with me, which is what one client chose to do, or they can have an Akashic Records reading and the activation. So it's a nice, I need an upgrade. I need something to get me motivated and moving. And that's it. That's just a wonderful program. We also have a new program that's all about energy of co-creation with source. And that's being taught by my husband. And it was released earlier this week, and that's doing very well. And then we have this course on remote viewing that I did with Tom Dongo, and that's a digital download. It's not an in-person class, but it's doing very well, and people are really liking it. So that's another new course. And we're growing. We have lots more coming on board. So I'm very excited that the school is doing well and that we have an amazing team that we work with. And I'm so grateful to all of you who are listening, who are interested in these things.
Well, thank you for your journey and sharing it with all of us, your books, your travel, the devotion to your self-nurturing and self-development, your spiritual um, friendship with your higher self, and the
Mm.
respect that you have for your team, that they come first with you. And that's the work that you're here to do, your mission, your purpose, your joy, your passion, your love. And yes, it has consequences because sometimes it takes you away from just going out and playing. But
Mhm.
we thank you for that. And I really encourage all the viewers to take a look at stgermain.com,
Um,
which is your
it's
website?
Street School,
Mysteryschool.com.
St. Germain Mystery
St.
School.com.
Germain
Mm.
Mystery School. I should know this by heart by now. And it'll also be linked in the description, the show notes, especially over here on YouTube, Sandra McCullough. So if you guys have any questions or comments or things like that for Maureen for her upcoming visit that she will have with us again to talk about more things between now and the end of the year, um, put them in the comment section. Let me know and I'll make a note and we'll ask her. We'll
And you
ask
can
her.
always reach us through info
Yes.
at St. Germain Mystery School. So
There you go.
if you have a question, let us know.
There you go. Well, gorgeous. Thank you so very much for being. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and
Thank
to
you.
all the viewers. Again, like, subscribe, and share these videos. We do appreciate your support, and we appreciate you coming aboard and listening and all that good stuff. So we'll see you on the next video. Say goodbye, Maureen.
Bye-bye. Thank you.